Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, and you know what that means. It's almost time to eat that turkey, but also it's time to get nerdy, y'all. Welcome to episode number 166 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest video game podcast in the galaxy. I am Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I've got my comrade in gaming commentary here with me, the Miggity Mac, also known as Maction. Mac, what is good, man? How are you doing with these new quarantine guidelines that are coming out, man? You hanging in there?
Oh, yeah, I'm hanging in there. I mean, to be honest, not that much has changed for me. Mrs. the Mac and I, we've been fairly distant for the longest time. That's what comes from being in crazy rural areas. You're not missing the fast food because there's no fast food within 50 miles. You're not missing the, going out and hanging out with friends because there's no friends within 150 miles. And
Plus, you got the internet that helps you hang out, right?
But yeah, I've got the internet, so it's just this. And
But I was more saying, are you guys? I guess you're not going out a ton, but did you have Thanksgiving plans? Like, did anything have to change because of these new rules that are being instituted due to COVID popping up again? We're nerds, so like this is our time. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we can't go out. We got Discord, we got Twitch, we got social media. We could still hang out. So you're probably just adjusting as well as you have been the past 9 months, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I've been working up to it. And but as for canceling plans, didn't really have much in the way of plans to begin with. The only thing I've really do is just go to work and come home, hang out. Thankfully, thankfully a lot of people have been up for playing tabletop RPGs via Discord and the like, and honestly, can't think of any activities that you can readily do online that feel quite as much like they do in person as the tabletop RPGs. I mean, it's not quite the same, but then again, I feel like it's closer than the rest,
Yeah, there's benefits to doing it online because you can put the map up right in Roll20. You can just it's super simple. If someone needs to get up for a minute and go to the bathroom, they can do that while everyone else continues, which I guess you could do in real life, but it just seems like it's so much more simple to get these things done. You know what I mean? You can mute your mic if something comes up. It's just nice. I like it. Well, Mac, I did have Thanksgiving plans. I was actually going to go to our old stomping grounds. Canceled those plans. You know what? Got to keep it safe. I am not a high-risk person, but I'm not trying to kill anybody either. So I'm doing the responsible thing and not making that drive with the family. We're going to chill at home. We're going to smoke a turkey. We're going to have about 5 pies. I will send you a picture. And if you're lucky, if you play your cards right, Mac, I may even mail you a piece of pie.
Oh, that's very kind of you, but I think it is liquid, fragile, perishable, and I'm pretty sure that a slice of pie, not to mention a whole pie, is both semi-liquid, fragile, and perishable.
All you have to do is put it in an envelope with a couple pieces of dry ice, and you're good to go. We're going to test this theory. We'll report back after Turkey Day, just so everybody knows. And Mac, on that note, I say we do what we do best and hop right into the gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. What's going on in gaming, Mr. Nice Guy?
There's a lot going on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Two Nerds in a Pod, episode 166. Thank you for those of you who are here live, and also those of you who are here after the fact listening to us on podcast services. Well, let's jump right in. The first thing that I want to talk about, Mac, is just a general thing that's going on. This is not a news story. This is just general news, right? Consoles released last week. The PlayStation 5, I almost said PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 5 released. The Xbox Series X and Series S released. And they are impossible to find. Dang near impossible to find. People are selling them online for $900 when they should be costing closer to $500, right? We also did get a new Game & Watch from Nintendo, which is not a new console, but it's just kind of a new clock thing that allows you to play a couple Mario games and has some cool hidden features for $50. Those are sold out as well. Mac, do you think this is a COVID thing as far as production goes, or do you think that this is just a typical console cycle where there's never enough inventory when we get started with these new generations? What are your thoughts, man?
Ah, man, it's so tough to say.
It's frustrating.
It is frustrating. I feel like it's mostly a question of degrees, right? To what extent have we had retailers be out of the consoles before? To what extent have we had people doing the scalping before? Now, if the question is on a Nintendo release, the answer is, it's about the same as it always was. But it feels a bit more pronounced this time around. And I think that could potentially have stuff to do with COVID, but I would have to know more about the production line than I think they're, interested in giving to schmucks like us.
Well, the interesting thing is some retailers like Best Buy has said they're not even going to have consoles on shelves during 2020. They will not have anything on the shelves console-wise, next-gen console-wise, until 2021. So I think that part of it is that some retailers are trying not to encourage large crowds to come in, but I also think that Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft, I just feel like they don't want everyone to have it day one. I feel like it's kind of a hype machine, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but we've seen this over and over again. Last gen, I wanted a PS4 day one. Could not find one. And Mac, you may remember we were living in a rural city in southern Utah at that time. It was not a city that has tons of people, but yet they were still sold out. So now that I'm in more of a major city, of course they're sold out. And I'll give you an example. So this past Saturday, I woke up early because I wasn't able to get a PS4 online previously. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Target. I'm going to get there when it opens, and I'm going to see if they have any PlayStation 5s in stock. So I get there. There's several people, not several, 3 or 4 people in line already waiting. They're talking about gaming.
Did you throw the elbows on the way in?
I didn't, man. I'm too respectful. That's why I go by Mr. Nice Guy online. It's not just a moniker. It's also a reminder to be nice. And long story short, the doors open at 8 o'clock. And it was one of those moments that you'd see in like a sitcom where people are just like walking and then they start walking a little faster. And like everyone's trying to be subtle about it. And then it just turns into a sprint. And it's like we're going through this maze that is Target, going through the clothes, going through the cereal, trying to get back to the electronics section. And we get back to the electronics section, and there was a girl in line who was not even outside the store. I have no idea what type of wizardry was going on that allowed her to do that, if she just slipped him a 20 or what it was. But she was first in line, and she just turned around with one of those evil smiles, Mac, just full of teeth. Just like, yeah, I beat you guys. Bottom line, they didn't even get any in. They didn't even have any Xboxes or PlayStation 5s that day, and they have no idea when they are getting them. So this whole thing is a nightmare, man. I don't know why we put ourselves through this as gamers, man. But I personally don't think it's a COVID thing. I feel like that's kind of a cop-out. I think that they just didn't produce enough, and I feel like it was maybe a little bit intentional. Just my thoughts. And we're seeing the same thing with the new NVIDIA graphics cards. Those are sold out as well. The 3080 and the 3090 that people are trying to get. So we'll see what happens. Moving on to our next news story. Let's talk about Bethesda. Mac, you remember we talked a little while back about how Microsoft had purchased ZeniMax and Bethesda for, I believe, 7.5, was it billion? That's a huge differential. That I believe it was $1 billion that they purchased it for. And they've kind of started to outline their plans because, we had conversations. Are they going to release these games on PS4 still? Will they be on Switch? Well, they've kind of started to talk about it. This is on GameSpot.com by James O'Connor. Quoting someone from Microsoft, it says, Stewart digs into some long-term plans and says, quote, we don't have intentions of just pulling all of Bethesda content out of Sony or Nintendo or otherwise. However, even if these games come to other systems, he believes they'll be at their best and sometimes arrive early on Microsoft platforms. Quote, what we want is we want that content in the long run to either be first or best or better, or pick your differentiated experiences on our platforms, he says. We want Bethesda content to show up as the best as on our platforms. I read that wrong, but you get the idea. Mac, how do you make one game better on a certain platform and lesser on another and still expect people to buy it? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So, well, I know mechanically, I have an inkling of how one does it. But your question isn't how it's done, but how do you do it and incentive, get people to
Exactly.
buy it
Right.
on
Right.
both platforms or buy it on the, we'll put in air quotes here, the inferior platform, the
Right.
inferior release. I mean, yeah, I think so. Going back, I think it was last time, maybe it was the time before, we talked a bit about the release of Resident Evil 2 on the Nintendo 64, right? In
Yeah, we did.
in a lot of ways, it was the inferior release in the sense that the data was significantly more compressed, lower resolution. There were a lot of, audio wasn't nearly as good. They did a lot of stuff to kind of, save space and get the whole game down onto the 64 megabyte cartridge. But it had that sort of randomization mode that was a feature that wound up, making it, hot take here, but wound up making it almost a superior game, even though by all accounts, it wound up being kind of the inferior copy. Now, I don't see that being a situation in this one. But I mean, that's the only way I can think of that you could have something that runs worse on a different platform, but yet still make it desirable, is to add something there that is unique to that game, like a randomizer in the case of, the Resident Evil 2 game, or, so on. I mean, of course,
Or like a modding tool or something.
yeah, or like a map building tool, or some kind of modding tool. And that would be, that would be very cool. And I think in that circumstance, if I was making that call and I'm like, well, I could go with this one or I could go with this one that has that, it would certainly make me lean more towards that. To that end, you know what? I'm going to leave it there. But yeah.
No, these are great points. And I mean, we've seen in the past, like with the Avengers, for example, it was a multi-platform game that just came out earlier this year. Pretty much the same from what I understand on Xbox and PlayStation, but the PlayStation version had Spider-Man as a playable character, as DLC. To me, that is not enough of a motivator for me to buy a game on a specific console, especially if I'm a PlayStation person and I want to play Bethesda games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can play them on PlayStation. I'm not the type to spend an extra $500 just to play a better version of a game on another console, right? Unless it's just unplayable on PlayStation, which I can't believe they would go that route, because then why would anyone even buy it, right? They would be shooting themselves in the foot. If their goal is to be able to have it on all consoles so that they can get that revenue and still make that money, they're not going to make the PlayStation or the Switch version so inferior that no one wants to play it. They're going to have to add some DLC, or like you said, a modding tool, a level editor, something on the Xbox version that entices you to play it there. But will that sell more consoles, or will it simply mean that people who already buy every console choose to buy Bethesda games on Xbox as opposed to PlayStation? I think that's what it means. I don't know that people are really going to play it, or rather buy a new console just to do this. The other thing is, Mac, I believe a lot of these games are going to be on Game Pass, right? So they'll be quote unquote free, not really free, but they feel like they're free as part of your subscription. And so that may be a factor too. I feel like they're going to lose out on some quote unquote sales that way, because people will just play it as part of their download subscription. So we'll have to see what happens, dude. I'm excited to see how they go with it.
Yeah, me too.
But let us know in the chat what you think. Now, some people had some thoughts. Galvatron said, I wish Microsoft would stop beating around the bush and just come out and say that ZeniMax games will be exclusive to Xbox or xCloud. Once again, I don't know if that's the case, but you're right. In this quote from Stuart, he said if they come to other consoles, right? He didn't say they're going to, so they're still probably thinking about it. And what did other people say? Go ahead.
Again, it winds up asking, we have to ask ourselves what Microsoft's big big end goal here is. And if their goal is to continue to sell consoles and to continue to push consoles, then it makes all the sense in the world to kind of hog ZeniMax games to themselves and all these Bethesda titles in the future. But if Xbox is indeed making inroads to try and get away from the console market, then it makes no sense for them to hang on to it. It makes all the sense in the world for their properties to be available as many places, especially now that they no longer, presumably, maintain direct competition with others. So I think where they go with the Bethesda games, with the other titles from ZeniMax that they've picked up in that purchase, winds up giving us a look into the future plans of Microsoft. And so
Yeah.
I think that might be a contributor to why they are kind of cagey about, what's going on here.
Yeah, and they did say they definitely plan to accumulate, or rather acquire, other studios. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do this. Let's keep things moving. Next news story. This is gaming adjacent. This is about Twitch. This is something that I thought was very interesting. With all the things we've been seeing lately, with streamers getting their old clips removed due to DCMA because they had music in their old streams, potentially getting banned due to these DCMA strikes that are coming up. There's a new news story, and I think it's important. This is on Kotaku.com, and it is written by Nathan Grayson. We're just going to read about this program. We're going to start in the second paragraph. Monster Cat outlined the new program in a post on its website today. I believe Monster Cat is a music streaming service. If streamers subscribe to Monster Cat Gold for $5 per month, they now gain access not only to a library of songs that can play during their streams, but also Twitch affiliate status. Affiliate is Twitch's first monetization tier, which allows streamers to gain paid subscribers, and bits, which are basically a donation currency. Before this year, the only way to become an affiliate was to unlock it by having at least 50 followers, 500 total minutes broadcast, an average of 3 or more concurrent viewers, and streaming on 7 different days. So, Mac, you can now buy affiliate status on Twitch. I don't have, I don't have a problem with this, but apparently it's kind of controversial, and a lot of people think it's maybe not a good thing. What do you think about that?
I mean, on the one hand, the requirements for affiliate status are, I don't know, maybe I have an unrealistic expectation of what it takes to receive the affiliate status, because by the time affiliate, had become a thing and they had codified, what's required, I had already met or exceeded those almost immediately. I imagine it is much harder if you don't already have a following to make that movement forward. However, because I feel like having the affiliate status doesn't cheapen affiliate status for other people,
Right.
I can't see this as being as more people having affiliate being a detriment. Gonna put a little asterisk there, and I will say that I understand where people might object, because it's because there's a pay to play option now, in the sense of being an affiliate. There's a way to buy your way in by signing up with this Monster audio cables.
Monster
Cat. Yep, that's the thing.
Yeah, I got no problem with it. I mean, there's enough room at the table for everybody to eat. You know what I mean? And with gaming becoming more and more popular, I think it's good to make it accessible to more and more people. If you're streaming and you have one viewer and you're putting on a killer stream, and that one viewer says, "You know what? I want to subscribe," then yeah, let them subscribe. Don't make that person have to wait, right, until they get 50 followers and until they get 3 concurrent viewers and 75. What was the other thing? I don't even remember the criteria.
7 days worth of streaming, a minimum amount of time, and 3 concurrent viewers. And
yeah, so all that stuff. Like, I have no problem with it. If someone wants to spend $5 a month, and then maybe they get their $5 a month back that they're spending on Monster Cat for affiliate status, more power to them. I don't think that paying your way into everything is a good idea. So I don't want someone to later tell me, "Well, you said paying to play or paying to win is okay." That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that in this sense, it's a business decision that people want to spend money to make money and get that affiliate status, and I'm okay with it. And Mech, that's all I had for news for this week.
Okay, well, let's move on to some video game history. What we're going to talk about today are just a couple of things that happened this week in years that came before. And I want to start in the year 2001. You may or may not be aware, because it was very popular in Japan, but not so much in the United States, that there were these places called the Pokemon Centers. They were essentially these shops that sold Pokemon gear, whether we're talking about, exclusive Pikachu plushies or, just anything Pokemon related. Mr. Nice Guy, I don't know if you've ever seen or interacted with one of those.
I haven't, but it sounds awesome. What year was this available?
Well, so it's been available for quite a few years, kind of. As a matter of fact, in 2010, they opened up essentially vending machines in and around Seattle that were run by the same thing, but there was only ever been, unless I'm very much mistaken, only ever been one permanent location inside of the United States for an honest-to-goodness retail store in order to purchase officially licensed Pokemon stuff at that location, and that would have been the Pokemon Center, opened in New York in 2001, this week.
Wow.
Again, there were the option of vending machines, essentially.
Sure.
Kind of, some larger vending machines, but still in or around Seattle, and places where there were little pop-up venues when they were doing Pokemon events and the like. But in 2001 was the first one in the U.S., and I think it might have been the first one outside of Japan. I think since they've opened up a few others in different places, and I believe that they closed it down, the one in New York, in 2008, if I recall right. But definitely, it was the first and only one that we in the United States got, the only Pokemon Center that we presumably could have taken our Pokemon to and had Nurse Joy
Dude, you beat me to it. I was just gonna ask, if you're hurt and you walk in there, will they heal you and stuff, or is that not the case? But you beat me to it.
Well, really, when you think about it, if you're hurting and you walked into the Pokemon Center and there were large plush Pikachus and Charmanders and the like, would it not have healed your soul? I think it would.
I think it absolutely would. You're right.
So moving right along, also this week in 2001, we had the release of the original Xbox.
Yes.
Still probably one of my favorite consoles of all time. As a matter of fact, I recently fired it up. Just last week, fired it up, played some Pump It Up Exceed, and had a great time of it. And I still try and fire up the original Xbox every so often, but I do love it. And I know we should save these for what we've been watching, what we've been playing.
That's all right.
I have not yet played, but I believe I've laid the groundwork to convince Mrs. the Mac to play Morrowind on my original Xbox.
Ooh.
I think it's gonna happen. Anyway,
that's dope, man.
But that's video game future, not video game history. So, moving right along, we have the releases of Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 this week. 2008 for the release of Left 4 Dead, and I have written in my notes 2009 for the release of Left 4 Dead 2, but that can't possibly be correct.
Yeah, I don't think it is, but it's all right.
Yeah. Anyway, nonetheless, I'm 99% sure that Left 4 Dead 1 is correct, and I remember them releasing Left 4 Dead 2 on the anniversary, so I must have just written it down wrong. Nonetheless, Left 4 Dead also also a game series that I have much fondness for. I won't bore you with the in-depth details, but we had ourselves quite a squad going on in the Left 4 Dead and the Left 4 Dead 2 days. I got together a bunch of friends, and we brought our Xbox 360s. My cousin and I actually went halvesies on a 360 in order to, to bring another console to bear on this. But we would play basically every Monday night for a few hours. We got pretty darn fast at some of those levels, and even though we were like tangentially aware that speed running was a thing, we logged some pretty quick times on No Mercy on the original Left 4 Dead, and very, very fun. So apparently, thank you, Rolf, for doing that. 17th of November, 2009. So, I guess it was 2009. It just seemed
like there should have been more than a year, right, between releases.
Right. It just seemed like we played. Maybe it's just that we played Left 4 Dead 1 so much that by the time Left 4 Dead 2 came out, it felt like longer than a year.
Now, do you remember the first time that we hung out? Do you remember that?
I remember the first time we met. I remember the first time we hung out at my place.
Okay, so
I felt like
I can't
pretty quick there.
I can't believe you don't remember this. So
no, I remember what you're referring to, though.
Yeah, you want to tell the story, or I guess you kind of just did.
No, please tell the story.
So I met Mac, right? I met his wife, my wife as well. We were all friends, and we didn't really know each other that well. Mac said, "Hey, we do this thing. We play zombies Monday nights." And I remember it was like some local restaurant that your friend was the manager of.
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of TVs up that were just in the restaurant. They all brought their Xbox 360s. We went, we played some zombies. We had a really, really good time. And so Left 4 Dead 2 is probably in part the reason that this podcast exists and the reason that Mac and I are such good friends. So shout out to Left 4 Dead 2. Shout out to Valve.
Exactly. And I mean, so Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 2, the relationship between Mr. Nice Guy and I, it all traces itself back to 2009 and those Monday evenings. And obviously this is why Left 4 Dead as a franchise is always going to hold such a special place in my heart and in our collective hearts. So yeah, that's just some video game history for you.
Nice. Well, now it's time for our topic of the week, where we talk about something that's relevant in gaming, the hottest story in gaming, and we give our opinions on it. Now, I got to call out Galvatron Type R for the hate in the chat right now. He's one of our favorite viewers, one of our favorite people. He just said, so Left 4 Dead 2 is the blame for this atrocity? No, Left 4 Dead 2 is the credit for this awesomeness that is 166 episodes of the award-nominated podcast, Two Nerds in a Pod. Sponsored by Game Insider. Time for the topic of the week, Mac. This comes from IGN.com, and this was all over the internet, but this particular story is by Joe Screbbles. Sony has rolled out the 20.02-02.25.00 system update for the PlayStation 5, which weighs in at 866 megabytes, Mac.
Hang on, could I get that version number again?
Yeah, 20.02-02.25.00.
.00. Yeah, I follow now. I thought
I should have switched back between zeros and O's just to mix you up, but yeah, I think they're all meant to be zeros. Specifics aren't known right now, with the official description simply saying that, quote, this system software update improves system performance. We've contacted Sony for comment on what the update should be changing. Since launch, unconfirmed reports have pointed to potential issues with PS5's rest mode and external hard drive related crashes. This update may be an attempt to fix those. The author says, sadly, having tested it for myself, this update seemingly does not fix the download queue bug that's hit Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, among other games. And it also says this update comes shortly ahead of PS5's second launch day on November 19th, when it will launch in many new territories, including Europe, following its November 12th release in the US, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand, and South Korea. So, Mac, here's my question for you and my question for the chat. We always have issues with consoles at launch, right? Overheating, red ring of death, all types of things. we often on this pod talk about how we find it irritating that games on day one have a patch that will quote unquote fix the game or add textures. Now we've reached that point with consoles. Why can they not just do this before they release? We're not talking about software anymore. Now we're talking about hardware. Why is this not done in testing, in troubleshooting before we get it in our hands? I don't get this.
Man, that's gosh,
The $1 million question.
$1 million question indeed. So I think it's fair to say that a lot of times when game consoles come out, they are pushing certain boundaries, right? And when you're pushing boundaries and you're trying to put new tech out there, there's always going to be those growing pains that come from, stuff, right? That come from having new things out there. Any indie developer can try their best to sort of figure out what the problems are going to be and patch those ahead of time, but nothing compares to the iterative power of the crowdsourcing factor of just having your game or your console out in the wild and being played by so many people. Finding out that, pressing back 5 times in a row enables the sticky keys, or whatever nonsense is going on. There's just so many things that can happen just from randomness and people making different decisions at points in times that is almost impossible for you to pre-plan out ahead of time. And while you could presumably take care of that stuff with some greater extent of in-house alpha testing or beta testing, and getting more testers to try things out and do stuff, that can get you closer, but it can't get you all the way there. Right?
I want to play devil's advocate because you said I mostly agree with you, but you said one thing that I strongly disagree with. You said any indie studio could try to figure this out in advance or something to that effect. We're not talking about an indie studio. We're talking about Sony, right? Sony has the money and the resources that this should have been figured out before. We could say the same thing about Microsoft with the Xbox 360 and the original Red Ring of Death. Absolutely unacceptable. And this is the same thing. I think it's fantastic that we're in a day and age where you can update hardware through the firmware, right? Not just software. But it always has amazed me. So look at a company like Tesla. They have different batteries for their vehicles. They have a mid-range battery that can go a certain amount of miles before it needs to be charged. They have a long range that can go a certain amount of miles before it needs to be recharged. But sometimes Tesla releases updates that will allow the battery to get more mileage. Why would you not just do that in the first place? Why would you, if you can make a battery work for longer with software, it's not based on what's actually in the battery, you can just program it. Why would you wait? And it's the same thing with Sony here. If you knew there were going to be issues, why would you wait to fix them after the fact?
So to your comment about me saying indie devs, that's mostly a function of the only people who I've really ever had open up about the game development process have been the indie devs.
Got it.
So I mean, not so much that I'm saying we shouldn't hold them to a higher standard, AAA devs and such with all their things. Just that it's I assume it's the same way, but all I know is what I've experienced from Kickstarters and things like that where I've been able to chat with them. But to your point about software updates, fixing things via firmware updates over the air and changing things, again, the only thing I can think of to be the kindest reading that I can give to Sony or to Microsoft is just trying to push hardware limits, trying to use technology that's a little less, a little less polished. I don't know how many people had troubles with the original Xbox. Very topical since it was this week in 2001. But I never had any problems with the original Xbox. I'm still rocking my, my first one, and I feel like it worked very well, in large part because the hardware that they used was essentially just straight up a mini PC. It was stuff that was already pretty well tried and true, and streamlined.
And it's Microsoft, right?
Yeah. And something with the 360, when they started moving into, they shifted towards setups that were more individualized toward the console. We had, we had those external hard drives that like clipped on and were different, and just in general they tailored it more to be a sort of, oh, this is a Xbox 360 and it's different from just being a computer. And I wonder how much of that unpolished hardware wound up being the cause of the Red Ring of Death. I mean, I'm not a hardware specialist. I don't know exactly how that all went down, but I could see that being the case, and maybe that's what we're running into here as well.
Well, let's read some of these comments. I was just gonna say we got some comments in the chat. So let's start with Galvatron. He says it's so obvious at this point that the PS5 was not ready to be released. It is missing so many features and not functioning properly. The first major PS5 firmware update was released today, and it apparently doesn't do squat. Well, we don't know that is the thing. We don't know that it doesn't do squat, but I do agree with you. It sounds like it wasn't ready to be released. He goes on to say the answer to my question about why this happens, I believe, is his life philosophy: follow the money. If you want to know why people do things and who stands to benefit when certain things occur, follow the money. And you're right. Sony had a lot to benefit from by releasing a console right now. However, I would argue they had a lot to benefit from by maybe pushing it back, because we're in the middle of a global pandemic and people are hurting. But to that point, there's not a lot of them sitting around, not a lot of PS5s that are accessible right now. So they still sold out despite the fact that we're in a pandemic. So I do believe that money was a motivator.
And to throw Spenis's comment out there, that this is why he feels that this generation started entirely too soon. These consoles could have waited another year before coming out, and the system would work 10 times more smoothly, and the finished products that came out. So these are just simply money-making and panic due to a pandemic rather than rushing greatness. And I mean, again, I don't know as I would go so far as to say that I think they're rushing greatness, or greatness is even to be had or found in these places. But I do want to try and give the most charitable reading that I can, because I feel like it's easy for us to all be like, shame on people for trying and failing. But what am I actually doing?
Yeah, you know what? I agree with Spenis, though. They really could have waited a year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this year we have gotten The Last of Us Part 2, Sony exclusive. We've gotten Ghosts of Tsushima, Sony exclusive, the fastest selling Sony exclusive of all time. Not the best selling, but the fastest selling exclusive for a new IP, Sony exclusive of all time. This could have been the swan song year for the PS4, which it really has been. And then next Christmas, just don't do a lot of games 2021, but then Christmas, come hard. Come with a new God of War Ragnarok, right? Come with, Sackboy. Maybe push Miles Morales back, because frankly, we just got a Spider-Man game in 2018. I think most of us would have been okay with Miles Morales being 2021. Come with those, and don't put Miles Morales on the PS4. Put it strictly on the PS5, right? I don't know. I could go back and forth on that. But bottom line is, I agree. They could have made the software, or rather the hardware, a little bit better. We would have all been okay with it. Maybe the pandemic is over. It would have been really, really good. They're under some pressure, Mac. They're trying to put out a console when people are working from home and doing things remotely. And so I want to be empathetic to that. But at the same time, I just don't like what they're doing with this hardware update to increase performance. So that has been our topic of the week.
Well, now we turn our attention to a crowdfunding effort or efforts that are trying to get off the ground in Kick or Kickstart. You know how it works. I present something here for you, and you say whether or not you think it's worthwhile and we should kickstart it, or whether, well, we should kick it out of here. However, this one's a little bit different because we are instead revisiting one from before.
Ooh.
You guys may recollect the Warrior 64 console that we were talking about. Now, when we discussed it, we said, and I was very clear to say that if the claims of the Warrior 64 group were in fact accurate, that this was going to be fantastic and well worth the purchase of the Warrior 64. Coming in at, $25 if you just want like a controller based off of the Hori mini pad, which is a great controller. $90-ish if you wanted the DIY kit that winds up. Oh no, I mean, sure, I can post the link.
Yeah, sorry, man. Just for people who maybe don't remember, or I can find one while you're talking.
No. I've got it here. I'll drop the link. Or if you were going to, $90 if you were going to get the DIY kit and install that on your thing, on your Nintendo 64. And that was nearly 2 months ago, right? When we picked it up and we talked about, this could be fantastic, especially because getting an HDMI upgrade, the Ultra 64 HDMI for your Nintendo 64, number one, is $165 just for the kit.
Right.
Like $150 or more if you want somebody to install it, because it requires some fine work and some steady hands. And number three, of course, the scarcity of it, trying to get at it in the first place. Well, over time, I have caught a little bit of flack for being non-cynical. And I am, of course, retracting what I said before. Not saying that it's worth it if the claims are true, but saying that it turns out this is not quite as good as it seemed when claims taken direct from, when claims taken at face value. So there were a lot of comparisons between the Warrior 64 and the Ultra HDMI mod that were unfortunately a touch misleading. Now, they never said that it was going to output 1080p. They said it was going to output 720p. Also, it's still the option of these things that are installed on being able to put that. Oh, yeah, and by the way, that 150 thing, coming with a refurbished N64 motherboard, new case, new, controllers, and of course their HDMI mod and the like. Still kind of a wobbler as to whether or not that is a good deal or worthwhile, but it's not quite the deal that we were originally led to believe. Now, will throw out there that I myself have changed my tune on this.
Oh, let's hear it.
My expectation was to have something roughly equivalent to the Ultra HDMI on my Nintendo 64, right? So that's not what's happening. And as to these very good questions, Crux Capacitor, in the chat about this, I don't know exactly how it's handled it. Only with 6 days left to go on their Kickstarter, which is now down to something like 4 days. 2 days, 49 hours to go. With only 49 hours to go, it was at 6 days left that they finally had basically units out to a few people like Metal Jesus Rocks, who did a very good, as best as he could, sort of rundown of what's going on with the Warrior 64. And in his opinion, it wasn't worth it. Again, my opinion as well. I've changed my tune on this, but I feel... it's frustrating, Mr. Nice Guy. We try to be positive, we try to look on the bright side, and we try not to let the cynicism get us down. But I'm afraid this is one time in which the cynics were right. So sadly, I think I'd have to say revise this and say kick it. Unfortunately,
did we both say kick? You mean did we say Kickstart when we did this one?
We both said Kickstart. And again, to be clear, when we said Kickstart, that was back when we were under the impression that certain things were going to be a certain way with respect to this. And from everything that we could see about the, about the whole endeavor, it was going to be roughly equivalent. They themselves were comparing it to the Ultra HDMI. So it is one of those things where, again, we both said, oh, you know what, I'll quit repeating myself. Point being is that we said Kickstart back in the day. I have shifted my tone to be Kick, and hopefully they can come up with a better iteration in the future. This thing's well past its funding goal, so they're going to wind up producing these, and here's to hoping that a second revision can get to where this first one should have been. But, sadly, it's not there yet.
Well, Mac, let me just say one thing about this, or two things, I guess. Let's look at it from a positive perspective.
Sure.
The positive is that you get a lot of games, and I probably said this at the time, you get a lot of NES-style games, 8-bit, right? Mm-hmm. You get stuff like, I guess Celeste is 16-bit, but you get some 8-bit stuff. Like The Messenger, right? 8-bit and 16-bit. Mm-hmm. You get a lot of 16-bit stuff. Games like Celeste, games like, what's that one Metroidvania that you really like?
Chasm?
Chasm. That's 16-bit, I believe. You get stuff like that. You don't get anything that's 64-bit graphics. Like, that's not a retro style that people are starting to create again. And so it's going to be lost to time because it stands up so terribly. That said, I feel like N64 games are probably best played on original hardware with a CRT television. Like, that, the reality is that's just the best way to play them. And that's probably why the HDMI cord is so expensive, the HDMI mod, because it's really just not how they're meant to be played. So once again, I feel like people who really are N64 enthusiasts still have access to that. And that's where I think this fails. But I appreciate what they're trying to do because we don't get remakes of a lot of these games. However, this year alone, Mac, we have gotten remakes of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 for current gen stuff. And we have gotten remakes of Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, which are N64 games that are now on the Switch. So that's another reason why this becomes a little bit more obsolete, in my opinion. But yeah. I get what you're saying, man.
No, I mean, I just wish it had gone the other way. I tried to be, tried to hold out hope, but it looks like sadly this is one of those cases where it was like, ooh, is this too good to be true? And it was right there on the line, and it turns out, yep, just a little too good to be true. So sadly, it's not going to work. Instead, I'll just have to stick with my RetroTink in order to get my HD out of my Nintendo 64. So, but that's been Nerdflex. Sorry, that's been... Hang on, let's try that again. But that's been Kick or Kickstart.
It has been. And now it's time for Nerdflex.
Ooh.
A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the host, and you never quite do. So we'll give everybody just a couple seconds to get into the chat. And if you have a trivia question that you want to ask, multiple choice, preferably, get that in the chat right now, and Mac and I will try to answer them. And Mac, I don't know what's up with my my test bank, because I've tried to pull it up like 3 times over the past few seconds. I'm going to try to pull it up here on my PC. So bear with me, nerds. We'll get it pulled up just so we have some backup questions. Mac, we still got some, what's it called? Some sound tests out there.
Yes.
And everybody knows that, right?
Yeah.
There's one that is very, very easy to guess.
Yes.
And I can't remember what episode. I feel like it's 145.
So
or something like that. Episode 145.
It would have been 2 sound tests ago. We do a sound test at least once a month. So, for example, next time around will be a new sound test, 167, and a new chance for somebody to win a Perler. And so, yeah, it would have been 164, one like 149 or so. I'll get back to you on the exacts, but yeah, there is a very easy one. It is
there
true.
Is. So here's the situation, Mac. I don't know if flippity.net, where we have these questions stored, is down,
Oh, is it
but
down?
it apparently, because I pulled up the email you sent me a while back.
Yeah, yeah.
I tried it on my iPad, it won't come up. I'm doing it on my PC right now, clicking the link, and it is saying it will not do it.
Oh.
So we may just have to say, hey, this is an episode with no nerd flex.
Oh man,
Uh,
that would be most unfortunate.
it would be,
We'd
but
have to rely on the kindness of friends to
I
save
know
us in this
the
our moment of need.
the link is dead, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what's going on. It says flippity.net took too long to respond. Try checking the connection, checking the proxy and the firewall, or running Windows network diagnostics, which we are not going to do right now. But I
Yeah.
tried it on 2 different devices. So if anyone has questions, let's get them in. Here's a question from Galvatron.
Let's
start
go
with
for
his.
the
Oh, we got
let's go
Spennis
for
one
a
first.
serious question, an actual gaming related question from Spennis.
All right.
Which is, in the Pokemon franchise, professors were named after trees. Which of these types of trees did not feature a professor's name? So we are provided with oak, sycamore, maple, birch, juniper, and elm.
I know Oak is one of them. Oak is
Indeed.
a professor.
I feel like maple was one. I feel like Professor Elm was one. I think
I don't think Birch was.
you don't think birch? I feel like juniper or maple, or sorry, I feel like juniper or sycamore is the one that seems odd man out to me.
I feel like Sycamore is one that we would remember, right?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. Birch was my first instinct.
I mean, I have to admit, the professor to whom we meet the professor that we meet near the beginning of a Pokemon game is arguably the least interesting and least memorable part of the whole game. Goodness me. Yeah.
So I'm gonna guess. I would guess Birch, dude. But I once again I don't know.
I feel like Juniper is the odd man out there.
Well, why don't we break our rule and let's go with different answers?
Let's go with different ones. Let us know, Spennis. I say that there was no Professor Juniper. Mr. Nice Guy says that there was no Professor Birch.
Yeah. And Galvatron's here in the chat with a silly question that has absolutely nothing to do with video games, and we are not going to indulge you and read that one. But he just posted a second one, which is serious. So we'll read that one. First, let's read Spennis' answer. What's the answer to his question?
So we had Oak in Gen 1, Elm in Gen 2, Birch in Gen 3, Juniper in Gen 5, and Sycamore in Gen 6. Maple was the odd one out.
Dang.
That was a solid question, Spennis, our resident Pokemaster.
Always.
So,
Galvatron has a question, serious question. He says, why is Scorpion from Mortal Kombat yellow/orange? A, his fiery nature. B, to show Lin Ku's cowardice. C, palette swap with Sub-Zero. D, all of the above. E, none of the above. Oh my gosh. Galvatron's one of those people, like, you ever have those professors in college who you're like, this is not education. This is just straight up trickery. When you get on the exam, like A1, B2, C3, D, 1 A and B, E, F and G. Like, I hate these. Like, just give us 4 options. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Mr. Nice Guy, they say when you don't know, you should go with C. But I am reasonably confident that the answer is C.
Palette swap with Sub-Zero?
Yep.
Okay, Sub-Zero was like blue and
blue and black. I mean,
but is that the reason why? I'll go with you on this.
Sure.
I'm not a huge Mortal Kombat.
Palette swaps were a big part of video games. When you're getting to the earlier ones, because that saves memory, and memory's usually in short supply. When whether we're talking about actual storage space or we're talking about video memory. So the more stuff that you can kind of, shrink things down and simplify, the better. And palette swaps are a big way of doing that. Like, for example, the old Final Fantasy games, you got to a new area, you fought new, baddies that had the same sprites. How did you know they were tougher? Well, they had a different color to them, different color palette. So palette
It's like
swap's very useful.
Mario and Luigi. All right, let's go with it. Let's go with C. Palette swap with Sub-Zero. Final answer. Let us know in the chat what the answer is. And I'm okay with us having 2 questions today, if that's what we got. Oh my gosh.
Oh, answer was apparently all of the above. Lin Kuei was Sub-Zero's clan, and Scorpion took their uniform and color to call them cowards for killing his family. That's some deep Mortal Kombat lore there.
Yeah, we're going to have to change the intro to this segment where you, the viewer, try to stump the host, and recently you always do. That should be the intro. Well, Mac, I say we just wrap with 2 questions.
Yeah, we'll wrap with 2. So now we move on to a little bit of legalese.
Legalese.
All right. So, as you know, we like to talk about legal stuff that is relevant to video games. And what we're actually going to talk about this time around is a little bit less video game specific and more Twitch specific. Mr. Nice Guy, you mentioned it earlier today. We were talking about that affiliate program as a result of the interactions that Twitch has been having lately with the music industry, with the RIAA. So as a result, they sent out emails to everybody and were just like, hey, we want to explain ourselves. And it sounded in a lot of ways like an apology. It certainly had the form of an apology, but there were some things that I certainly took in issue with in their thing, and we're gonna go over some of my grievances because it specifically relates to what the DMCA does, right? So let's just open this with corporations, including Twitch, are not your friends. And
this sounds familiar.
This does sound familiar, doesn't it? So they said in their email, they said that they said things about the DMCA, and they're like, oh, the DMCA allows you to do da-da-da-da-da, and so on and so forth. But I just want to clear up, lest you get confused, that the DMCA does not actually allow you to stream stuff on Twitch. The DMCA does not compel Twitch to take down your videos when someone makes a complaint as a matter of law. The DMCA does not tell Twitch where the line is with repeat offenders. The DMCA does allow the platform, Twitch in this case, to avoid liability if they make an effort to remove repeat offenders, as well as if they, make a good faith effort to take down videos. But, I will just say as a side note, every platform out there has basically taken the requirement to remove repeat offenders as being remove repeat alleged offenders, because the liability they don't want to assert is they don't want to go to bat for you lest they wind up on the hook for cash. So, whenever they try buddying up to you and telling you stuff like that, just remember they opened up their email telling you stuff that was false. And, when somebody opens with falsehood, just know that they don't have your best interest in heart. Anyway, we're going to go to some of the other suggestions that Twitch gave to people for how to avoid getting takedown requests, right? They said, read the end user license agreements of the games that you're playing and turn off the music, because people were like, hey, are we going to get knocked down for our in-game music being used? And they're like, yeah, it's not very likely, but read the end user license agreement and turn off the music. And as we discussed in episode 163, we discussed this at great length, most end user license agreements either don't mention streaming at all, or they reserve the rights in such a way that if the company wants to, they can just take your stuff down. And the company, the video game company, wants it that way because it helps them to have a nuclear option if they want or need. And you, the streamer, just has to hope that they don't. But that's their nuclear option to take stuff down. In the case of, was it Sony who was taking down stuff using DMCA to take down unfavorable YouTube stuff about a year ago? I mean, there's so many of those that it's just whatever. So let's take a look. Let's go for something practical. And let's take a look at not just a video game that has music, but a video game that is music. So Fuser is what Harmonix did with the technology that they built for DropMix. Mr. Nice Guy, did you ever play DropMix with me? Did we ever play that together?
I never played that one with you. We
Dang
did
it.
not, no.
I've got it in the thing. The next time I come to visit, I'll bring it because it's great. But Fuser is the full digital version of that game that basically allows you to DJ and mix music. So let's see what Fuser itself says about the music in its game. And I went through the EULAs of everything, and they said that no monetization is allowed whatsoever if you're playing their game. And I'm going to quote direct, "This means no running of ads and no ad breaks during a stream. Similarly, you should not solicit or show overlays of donations, paid subscriptions, bits," end quote. They also said archive footage can only be done on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram in very specific cases, and only 33% of their music archive is permissible. These were the things that they laid out in their end user license agreement, and ended all, and I say ended off because I'm going to end with the kicker, with the punchline. But this was the punchline was at the beginning of their end user license agreement and their specific instructions on streaming. And they said, and for all these conditions, they said, quote, "While neither NCSoft nor Harmonix can help you clear a takedown, claim, or strike, you should be able to stream/post Fuser in user-generated content," that's, gameplay, "without issues if you follow these guidelines." So even the best that Fuser and Harmonix and NCSoft are willing to offer you in these cases is, hey, if you only do these and you don't have ads run, not that that's going to be a problem, because it's not like ads happen without anybody noticing, right? That's not something that happens on
Wait, what do you mean?
Twitch, right? Like Twitch doesn't run an ad without you telling it to run an ad, right?
That has absolutely changed. They do now.
They do. So you're telling me
they absolutely do.
So you're telling me that something that I have absolutely no control over could put me at odds with both Harmonix and the RIAA as per these requirements set down? You're telling me that I can't actually guarantee that I can play Fuser without having ads or ad breaks or anything else running on a stream?
That's what I'm telling you.
Oh man, I am so surprised. All right, let's move away from theory, though, and let's just talk some facts. A sad fact, Absnerdity, streamer on Twitch, hilarious guy, great entertainer, friend. I think I would consider him a friend. And for quite a few years, he was engaged in the endeavor of beating all the Super Nintendo games library. And I was fortunate enough to be there to witness a large chunk of that. Lately, he's focused a lot more on indies and playing the Final Fantasy franchise, though, but he made, huge swaths in there. And the RIAA took issue with the content of one of his VOD files. And keep in mind, from the period of time it would have been a Super Nintendo title. And Twitch deleted it immediately and sent Absnerdity a takedown notice and told him to delete everything. Specifically to, and I'm going to put quotes, "clear your account of any potentially infringing content," end quote. And I think he said it best. I'm going to quote his November 13th tweet. "Well, I've got my first one. I believe it was because of SNES Revolution X. I'll never know, though, because Twitch deleted the VOD. I'll never be able to see if it was actually infringing or if it was just a mistake on their part. How am I supposed to fight or rebuttal this claim if you delete the evidence? It's not like a robot has ever made a mistake before with, over applying content takedowns. That's never happened to any of us before." Followed by, of course, the heartbreaking tweet where he said, "Deleting all my highlights from ever, one by one. There's no way to delete them all at once because there was no multi-takedown option, and he had 3 days to comply or potentially suffer a lot more, and goodbye SNEStravaganza," which is what he called it back in the day. So, really, what we're getting at is there's a lot of more things to talk about here, and I've already taken us way over time on this and other things. But Twitch has acknowledged that they've received takedown requests before, and they didn't do anything to really curb stuff. And they have said that they have essentially taken a quick pause on these takedown requests, and I don't know what form that takes, whether they negotiated it or anything like that, in order for them to have the time to get the tools out there, in order for streamers to have a better go at it. But this has been an issue, a legalese issue that's kind of been building for a long time, that we've touched on episodes 163, 124, back to episodes 97, and I think as far back as like 80, where we've talked about, you know, the specific legalities that surround gameplay and streaming and how it's big unknowns in a lot of these things. And it's a real shame that we've had that long to grapple with these issues, but yet we've made no progress. And sadly, it's good people, honest people, who are making good faith efforts here, who wind up getting caught in the crossfire, like Abs Nerdity and others. And yeah, it's a shame, and I don't know if you've got anything to say about that, Mr. Nice Guy. But
My only thing that was funny is that you like you legitimately remember old episode numbers. And that's why I was laughing, is because like you're like, as far back as episode 80, I believe we touched on it for a minute in episode 97. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what episode we're on right now unless you remind me before we hit record. So it's just very entertaining.
So a part of what I do is I do actually check back on previous episodes and see, because I keep my notes. So I check back on previous ones and I just see if we've touched on it before, so that it's just like, hey, you want to know more? Episode 163, that's where you want to talk about, you know, rights as it relates to streaming. But, you know, I mean, yeah, no, yeah, I am a little cartoony sometimes when it comes to this.
It's all good, man. Well, that was dope. What else you got to say about that, man? Or is that it for now?
That's it. It's just a shame.
It is a shame. But you know what's not a shame? That we have, actually, this is a shame as well, that we have come to the end of episode number 166. Thank you so much for tuning in. But before we go, ladies and gentlemen, we have one last thing to talk about, and that's what we've been watching and what we've been playing, where we talk about just that, the cool nerdy stuff we've been into on Netflix, on Hulu, on Sling TV, on Comcast, depending on what you have for cable. The stuff we've been playing on our Xboxes, PlayStations, mobile devices, PCs, and more. Maybe you've been rocking that Tamagotchi this week. Maybe you've been going old school. Maybe you've been playing some Pogs. We want to hear about that. So let us know in the chat what you have been into, because we're always looking for more nerdy stuff. Mac, I will lead off this week. Your boy just finished season 2 of Cobra Kai. What a cliffhanger. And I won't say more than that in case anyone else wants to watch it. But I believe we're getting season 3 in January, so I'm looking forward to that. What else have I been watching? I started watching the David Letterman interview series on Netflix, Mac. I don't know if you've seen this. It's called Our Next Guest Needs No Introduction.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, David Letterman interviews like some of the biggest people in various entertainment venues. And I started watching the Dave Chappelle episode, and it's very, very entertaining so far. I'm really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through. What else have I done? You know, my wife suckered me into watching a Hallmark movie. That's love right there, Mac. That's love. Watching one of those cheesy Hallmark movies. You know what Hallmark movie I want to see, Mac? I want to see a Hallmark movie where both the man and the woman are extremely poor. They're both below average appearance, and they fall in love, and they have a ton of debt, and they just got to figure it out. Instead, it's always the opposite. It's like two rich people who are just like ridiculously good looking, and they've loved each other for years, and it all works out. It's very cliche. But my wife had me watch that for date night. That's love, guys. If you want some tips, watch a Hallmark movie with your girl. As far as what I've been playing, Mac, just got to chapter 7 of Half-Life Alyx. Really enjoying that. And what else, man? I've been doing some stuff with the kids. They got me playing some Mario Kart this past Saturday. Oh, and also Jedi: The Fallen Order is now available on Game Pass. So I downloaded that on the Xbox and I played an hour or two of that, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's a good Star Wars game. That's it for me, Mac. How about you?
Oh, for me, I haven't been watching a lot. I started The Witcher recently, and I have been playing a little bit of Chasm, trying to get to the top of those daily and weekly leaderboards again. A little bit out of practice, if I'm honest, but I'm putting in the time. And of course, some tabletops, some fifth editions, some GURPS, and just a healthy teaspoonful of hanging out with awesome people like you,
That's dope.
right here, right now. As for our friends and comrades here with us, get those watching and playing in. I'll take care of the watching here. Rolf is watching Game of Thrones, The Boys. And I think the delay must be a little bit tonight.
People are typing slow, and that's totally cool. But they're starting to come in.
Yeah, there we go. Let's see. Mets Girl is watching Arrested Development, IT Crowd. And yeah, why don't you go ahead?
I'll read some of the playings while we wait for people to type stuff. Ralph is playing Crusader Kings 3, which I remember him saying is his game of the year, and it got a 10 rating, I believe, on IGN. So I'm excited to see what wins, if that game wins or if something else wins, right? He also has been playing No Man's Sky. Mets Girl has been playing Savage Worlds, GURPS, Minecraft, and Earthbound. All good stuff.
Crux is on the same that he was before, and in an ultimate nerdy power move, studying French and reading books in addition this week. That's
Nice.
Hats off to you, sir.
And Mets Girl threw in that she's watching Mando, which is The Mandalorian, I assume.
Oh, gotta be.
And I watched episode 3 of that as well. It was pretty dope, no spoilers, but I'm really enjoying it. I would say the first 2 episodes were better of season 2, but the 3rd episode was not bad. I really am enjoying what they're doing with Baby Yoda and the character progression
Yeah.
and his appetite. I'll leave it at that. Well, Mac, why don't you take us home, brother?
Sure, we'll call it for the evening. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of Two Nerds in a Pod, for making this show happen each week, being here with us. Y'all are the best. You're the greatest watchers. You're just the greatest people. Be sure to tune in next time on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central at twitch.tv/Two Nerds in a Pod. Keep it nerdy, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Woo. All right.
Well, let's do that outro real quick.
Oh. Okay.